You probably have a first aid kit in case of accidental injuries, but do you have a financial first aid kit? To break down everything you need to know, we have Winnie Sun, Sun Group Wealth Partners Managing Director here. Winnie, good to have you back on the program here with us. All right, so walk us through the first aid kit, the financial first aid kit checklist, and everything that is analogous to something as simple as the Band-Aids in there, all the way out to perhaps some gauze pads. We're getting too literal, but just take us through that checklist.
Absolutely, Brad. Thanks so much for having me. Financial first aid kit is literally that. So think about the things that you might need in case of a natural disaster or unexpected medical emergency. We're talking about all the financial statements that you have. Think about like after you file your taxes, what forms and documents did you need? Those go into your financial first aid kit, as well as things such as a living trust or a will, or the names and email lists and the contact information of your financial advisors, your attorney, your credit card statements and the companies that they're with and the contact information there. You're talking about all that in one safe location that's quickly accessible to you. And I'll add, this is an important one too, because a lot of times we forget, if case of emergency, you want to make sure that this file is not only with you, but also you have an encrypted file on the cloud if possible. And then the other thing I would recommend is actually keeping a safe encrypted copy with someone that you trust outside of your state.
It's interesting, Winnie, and a great checklist layout there. I wonder, even as you're mentioning the encryption and needing to make sure that you're backed up to the cloud, for instance, how much of the checklist and how much of that financial first aid kit is tangible or is something that is physical copies and assets versus what needs to be digitized?
So, Brad, great question. I personally prefer to have everything in digital format because I think that gives you easier access, right? In case you're traveling or in case of, like here in California, in case of an earthquake or a wildfire and you're not at your home, then you have access to this data. And a lot of professionals, actually, like I'm a financial advisor, we have access to encrypted drives that are, that potentially could help our clients, and your attorney or CPA might have this as well. But yeah, in terms of physical, you might want to have maybe, a little bit of cash on hand, maybe a few $100s just in case of emergency so you can grab from it quickly. But aside from that, most everything can be digital.
It's interesting, especially in times of emergency, you always have that person that's listed, call this person if such and such happens. So how do you kind of go about putting together your call list, if you will, of who needs to be contacted first when you are thinking of this financial first aid kit?
Right, Brad. This was actually inspired because my dad had a medical emergency a few years back, and literally it was just scrambling, trying to figure out all the important documents, right? And so you want to think about in that nature, if something were to happen, and if I'm the person who is the organizer or person who takes care of the finances at home, what are the things that my family would need if I wasn't able to help guide them through this process? So one of the easiest ways to do that is to do this, right now is actually a great time. You just finished filing your taxes not that long ago. You can put everything into a folder, and then you figure out everything else. When you pay your bills, who do you pay? Where do you bank? All those documents should go into one place, and then take a moment to scan all that information. The other thing that I think is really important, especially for us parents out there, is consider including a letter to your loved ones. This not only gives them directions on how to handle who to contact, but there are certain things that you may have wanted them to know in case you're not there. And this is something that's a challenge for me because it's hard to get through that process, but recognize that if you don't do this, you don't want to have any regrets of not doing it in the future.
That's a really good and sobering point, but again, it's part of the preparedness as well. In that instance, what do you do with your passwords? Say you need to make sure someone else has access in the event that you aren't able to. How do you make sure that that access is still passed on as well?
So, Brad, that's a great question. And a lot of password programs out there will have ways where you can actually assign a person or a safe person who will be able to have access. Like, for example, I use LastPass to collect all my passports, right? And so you want to figure out what that process is ahead of time and find someone in your life who is somewhat technically savvy, that in case something happens, that your family knows to go to that person. In my case, my husband's such, my sister's tech savvy. So you want to find someone like that. And I can't emphasize that enough, is also to find someone who's out of state. It doesn't even have to be just out of state, it could be out of the country, but someone who's not in your geographical area, just in case of a natural disaster, then that person can help you out, and that they might be able to have internet access more quickly than someone that's in your neighborhood.
Winnie, great to have you back on the program with us. Some very valuable tips here. Winnie Sun, Sun Group Wealth Partners Managing Director. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Brad.